Sound speeds, and welcome back to Masked Mics. Before we go and unmask the two microphones that are masked before me, let me say this. If you have not yet watched the other videos in the Masked Mic series, you need to play catch up. They're numbered sequentially for a reason, and you need to watch them in order. Otherwise, what we're doing here will make no sense. So start with that playlist right there if you have not yet watched any of the videos in this series. Trust me on this and thank me later. But for right now, let's unmask these two microphones. Starting with the Rode NT1A, and we have over here the AKG C414B ULS. Let me talk about these microphones. For the 30th anniversary, Rode re-released the NT1 microphone as the NT1A. A is anniversary. Now, they made a few changes of the design of the microphone. This one's a nickel-colored microphone, and the NT1 is a black microphone. The shock mounts are the same, and other things are basically the same as well. They are both cardioid pattern microphones, but this one here, the NT1A, boasts the lowest noise floor of any studio-grade microphone. It's also one that ACX recommends that you use and consider buying if you're going to do any voiceover work for ACX audiobooks. But I digress. The shock mount that comes with it, the only modification I did to it is I took off the pop filter, which does come with it for free. I've not used a pop filter on any of the videos in the Masked Mic series, and since it was integrated in there with a little screw on there, I decided to take it off so that way it wasn't hanging on there, or I'd suddenly have to use a pop filter on there. Trying not to pop the microphone, but I think you're probably like me and you're hearing it pop occasionally. This and the NT1 are both sold in stores right now, so I'll put links down in the description down below. This microphone right here is sold for about $230 new right now. Now, looking over here at the AKG C414B ULS, this is no longer sold in stores, but it has a very similar sound. This microphone was sold for $800. You can buy them as cheap as about $500 now, but you will typically find them in stores more readily available for about $600. The C414 has gone through various different generations of use and basically designs as they have released various different models. I'll avoid telling you all about them and how wonderful all the different models are, but I'll put it this way. If you're interested, I have the story of the C414 down in the description down below. Feel free to read about it. But the main takeaways here are that this is a 4-pattern microphone. It is cardioid. It is super cardioid, either that or hypercardioid, I can't remember. It's omnidirectional and it's binaural. Also, it has 2 switches on the back, one that controls and gives you 2 pad settings and one that gives you 2 settings for roll-off. This microphone over here, the NT1A, is just a cardioid pattern microphone. So both of them are in cardioid pattern microphone and cardioid mode, so that way you can have an easy comparison between the two of them. What did you think of these two microphones? I hope you wrote down in the description which ones you liked in the previous video, because they are now unmasked and you know what they are. So let me also add this. Thank you so much to Rode for sending me the NT1A microphone to share with you guys. Now, expect a review sometime in the future, but right now, you now know I have it. So hopefully you enjoy the sound of it. Now, the C414 is on loan from my friend Michael Wynne, who has a YouTube channel that if you've not yet checked out, make sure you check it out right there, Michael Wynne. He goes behind the scenes on a lot of television shows, and he'll do that, and he'll talk about special tricks and tips on how to do how to do editing and things like that involve, advanced editing and stuff, and little tips and tricks, that very simple little things you can do to make your project sound a lot better. And so check out his channel right up there. So right now, I will also like to add this as well, that if you have a microphone you would like me to compare to another microphone in this series, feel free to email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com and let's talk about it. But for right now, let's go ahead and get ready for 2 new Masked Mics to just be compared. They're really wanting to be compared, so let's get to them. Get your listening ears on, because we have 2 new Masked Mics before me, and before we get to the comparison, why don't we start with a noise floor test? To help you compare these microphones, I'm going to tell you a story from my early years as a director in public access television. I started when I was 17 years old, and by the time I was still 17 years old, I was directing live shows over the air. And there was only a few shows per day that were allowed to go live, and you had to kind of enter a lottery for those time slots. First come, first served, technically got them, but there were special considerations that needed to be as well. One of the live shows I first found myself working on when I was 17 years old was a show called Tech Support. It was a show about computer tech support. hence the name. It was an hour-long call-in show, and I thought it was a lot of fun simply because I didn't know a whole lot about computers, and we had this one guru on the show that was just a genius about every aspect of it. The other guy was a computer guy that owned his own computer company and built computers. So the two guys were knowledgeable. Now, the second guy I mentioned was the producer of the show. Occasionally, we'd have guests on the show, and one guest we had on there was the owner of a rival computer company, but it was a very big company. They had a lot of push on the radio stations that most of the people listened to, at least, in my circles. So there was a lot of people that knew about that computer company, and I'm not going to give anybody free advertisement. So therefore, I'm not going to mention them by name. But the guy who owned that company, that other rival computer store, came on one time as a guest for a couple of segments because he was running a sale and he was just going to talk a little bit about a few of the things that they're doing that was kind of cool, and it could not be matched by the producer and company owner. So we brought him out there, and he knew that his segment was only going to be about 5 or 6 minutes long. But for whatever reason, when it was time for me to get him off the show, I'd already told him that when I say this one, or when the talent up there says this one phrase, we're going to cut off and cut away. At that point, quietly stand up and remove his wireless microphone, put it down in the chair, and walk away. Because we were going to basically be on this kind of a shot, a close-up type shot on one of the other performers, one of the other on-screen talent. And at that point, you would basically have them on camera, and suddenly the guy would just disappear. It's kind of one of those movie magic things on live TV. I'd bring down his microphone and all would be great. When it came to the actual show, though, he would not get up and leave. We did give him that cue, and we cut away, and he just sat there. And my floor director was out there like, trying to get him off. But he was just sitting there listening to the conversation and completely oblivious. For some reason, he thought he was going to be on for the entire hour, or at least that's all we could guess. The people in the control room were kind of starting to laugh because they're like, how are you going to get him off the show? And I was like, oh, I have certain ways I can do it, but I don't want to necessarily be rude. And so I said to my floor director, just try to see, I'll cut back over there over to the main talent, the main host of the show, and see if we can try to get him off there too. He went over and physically tried, grabbing his arm and trying to kind of direct him, but the guy stayed in the chair. It was pretty obvious for whatever reason he was just going to stay there. So I had to resort to more influential means. And some of the people in the control room with me were starting to laugh. And they're like, yeah, you're not going to be able to get him to leave. I said, yes, I will. Give me a piece of paper. They gave me a piece of paper. I wrote a note, folded it in half, and slipped it to somebody and said, here, give this to the floor director. Have them give it to this particular guy who I wanted him to leave. Well, the floor director takes it, he slips it to the guy. I cut away to the host again, and the guy looks at it. He instantly flings out of his chair, starts to run off the stage, leaves his microphone on, and it rips off of him and everything else and just falls all over the floor. The two hosts of the show were like, what's going on here? That was such a surprise to them. And everyone was looking at me and said, what did you tell him? And by then, he's running into the control room. He's like, what? Where? And I'm like, outside. Go outside real quick. And he's like, okay. And he runs out there. He didn't come with anything, so he didn't leave anything. And I directed the facilities manager to not let him back in as soon as he was outside the building. And he went charging out the back door, and that was it. We didn't see him again. The reason why is because when people ask me, what did I say to him? I told him the truth. I slipped him a note that said, your car is being towed. So yeah, when I want you to do something, I'm going to make you do something if you are on my show and I want you gone. So that was my fun little story for this episode, helping you compare these two microphones. What are they? I have no idea. But you will know what they are in the next video when I unmask them. But until then, they're going to be my secret. Take care. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.